Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Konita Hana Farhana and my partner Saftezani Sakusumo. And for today's video, we would like to explain about culture and civilizations in Netherlands. Before we jump to the presentation, here are some clips of the beautiful landscape in Netherlands. So the first thing that we would like to discuss is cultural life. As we can see in the previous clips, the cultural life of Netherlands is varied and lively. Dutch paintings and craft are world-renowned, and Dutch painters are among the greatest that the world has ever known. The Dutch themselves take a great pride in their cultural heritage, and the government is heavily involved in subsidizing the arts while abjuring direct artist control of the cultural enterprises. The next, we have daily life and social customs. Symbols. Wooden shoes, lead hats, tulips, and windmills are known around the world as symbols of Netherlands, but only a small part of the story contemporary life in the Netherlands. Flowering bulbs, including tulips, remain an important export commodity and festivals celebrate them. They are also featured in the annual spring flower fair at Keukenhof Gardens and at the venues such as the Alzheimer flower markets. Dutch cuisine is famous for its many individual dishes, including stuffed pancakes, or we can say pannenkoeken, pastries such as pancakes or a treat filled with almond paste, oliebollen, which is fried cake sprinkled with powdered sugar, and speculoos or seasoned cakes. Here is also variety of hard cheeses, including Edam and Gouda, which are world-famous varieties originating from the cities to which they are named. For the beverage, here is the Jenever, or the progenitor of Dutch gin, is a barley malt-based alcoholic beverages. And for the last, we have Dutch licorice, a popular candy which is very salty. For the holiday in Netherlands, in addition to traditional Christian holidays, which are Easter, Christmas, Pentecost, and Ascensions, the Netherlands celebrate Queen's Day at 30 April, Memorial Day at 4 May, and the Liberation Day at 5 May, although the latter is observed only at 5-year intervals. Now we move to the art. The first is painting and sculpture. The history of Dutch painting offers such a deep and rich lot of names that only a few can be touched on here. Certainly, among the most revered are those which are Rembrandt van Rijn and Vincent van Gogh. Rembrandt painting in the 17th century became a master of light and shadow, a technique reflected in his landscape as well as such portrait as his monumental group portrait, now known as Night Watch. And Van Gogh, who was born in the 19th century, was a powerful influence in the development of modern art. The next is literature and the performing arts. Dutch literature and theater have always been handicapped by the smallness of the proportions of human race that speak Dutch. Perhaps the greatest name of Dutch letters was that of the Renaissance humanist Erasmus. Contemporary Dutch writers who are internationally known include Harry Mulisch and Chris Nutboom. The country's performing arts are widely encouraged and supported. The National Ballet at Amsterdam and the Netherlands Dance Theater are internationally renowned. Theater companies are all private foundations, though the state provides their financial assistance. The Dutch film industry is small. The International Film Festival Rotterdam is the country's leading film festival, and the Netherlands Film Museum in Amsterdam is the National Motion Picture Archive. The last thing that we would like to discuss in art is music. The Netherlands has not produced composer of the stature of some of its neighboring countries, although it has built a fine reputation of performance. The Amsterdam Concertgebouw Orchestra is world famous, and the Residency Orchestra at The Hague and the Rotterdam Philharmonic Orchestra also have fine reputation. Various other towns have orchestra and choral group, and there is a Dutch National Opera Company. Noted musical events include the World Music Festival at Kerkrade and the North Sea Jazz Festival at Rotterdam.
Well, after we discuss about the culture of the Netherlands, we move to the next chapter, that is Dutch civilization in the Golden Age. The century from the conclusion of the 12 Years' Truce in 1609 until either the death of Prince William III in 1702 or the conclusion of the Peace of Utrecht in 1713 is known in Dutch history as the Golden Age. It was a unique era of political, economic, and cultural greatness during which the little nation on the North Sea ranked among the most powerful and influential in Europe and the world. Next is the economy. Although the Netherlands staunchly resisted new competition, Europe's long-distance trading system was transformed from being largely through the Netherlands, with the Netherlands as the universal buyer, seller, and shipper to one of many routes and forces in competition. Nonetheless, the wealth acquired during a long century of prosperity made the Union a wealthy country with far more capital than can be found in domestic investment. But the economic burden of repeated wars made the Netherlands one of the most heavily taxed nations in Europe. Tax levied on trade in transit and out of the country, but as competition becomes tougher, such tax rates cannot be securely tied, and because the burden falls on consumers. Excise and other indirect taxes make the Dutch cost of living one of the highest in Europe, although there are considerable differences between the different regions of the Republic. Dutch prosperity was built not only on master trades to the Baltic and to France and the lands of Iberia, but also on foreign trade with Africa, Asia, and America. Attempts by the Spanish king to exclude Dutch merchants and shippers from the lucrative colonial trade with East Asia led the Dutch to trade directly with the East Indies. The West India Company, founded in 1621, was built on more shaky economic foundations. The commodity trade was less important than the slave trade, in which the Dutch excelled in the 17th century, and privateering, which operated mainly out of the port of Zeeland and preyed on Spanish and other shipping. The West India Company had to be reorganized several times during its previous existence, while the East India Company lasted until the end of 18th century. The next is society. The social structure that developed with the economic transformation of Dutch life was complex and characterized by the dominance of the business class that centuries later called the bourgeois, albeit with some significant differences. The social better people of the Dutch aristocracy were only to some extent land aristocrats, most of whom lived in the less economically developed inland province. Most of the Dutch elite were wealthy urbanites whose fortunes were made as traders and financiers. The common people consist of many classes of artisans and small entrepreneurs whose prosperity provided the basis for the generally high standards of Dutch living, and a very large class of sailors, shipbuilders, fishermen, and other workers. Dutch workers were generally well paid, but they were also burdened with extraordinarily high taxes. The quality of life is characterized by lesser differences between classes than is the case elsewhere, although the distinction between the great merchant's house on the Herengracht in Amsterdam and the dock workers' hut is all too obvious. What is striking is the comparative simplicity of even the affluent class and the sense of status and dignity among ordinary people. There was also much mingling between the city recreants who had great wealth and political power and the landlords and lower aristocrats who made up the traditional elite. The next is religion. Calvinist Protestantism became the country's officially recognized religion, politically favored, and economically supported by the government. But Reformed preachers were thwarted in their attempts to suppress or expel other religions, where broad tolerance was extended. Mass conversions to Calvinism have been limited mainly to the early decades of the 80 Years' War, when Roman Catholics still often bore the burden of their preference for the reign of Catholic kings in southern Holland. Although public Catholic practice is prohibited, interference in private worship is rare. Jews settled in Holland to escape persecution. Sephardic Jews from Spain and Portugal were more influential in economic, social, and intellectual life, while Ashkenazim from Eastern Europe formed a layer of the working poor, especially in Amsterdam. Despite their remarkable open contact with the Christian community around them, Dutch Jews continued to live in their own community under their own law and rabbinic leadership. The last that we're going to discuss is the culture of the civilization in Golden Age. The economic prosperity of the Dutch Republic in this Golden Age was matched by extraordinary cultural achievement, which drew from the prosperity of the country not only a direct source of financial nourishment, but also an encouraging and sustaining purpose and spirit. This is reflected in the first instance by a series of famous historical works in which a proud new nation recounts with the pain of its birth and its growth to greatness. It was only at the end of the century that Dutch historians began to express the feeling that political grandeur might be temporary. The great 17th century philosopher who lived in the Dutch Republic was the Frenchman René Descartes. Despite being an outsider, Descartes found in Holland freedom for intellectual inquiry and personal involvement. Scientific activity in the United Province also reached a high level. Dutch literature, which recognized great creativity during the Golden Age, remains in the possession of a small number of people who speak and read Dutch. Music was hampered by the Calvinist antipathy to what they saw as frivolity. Organ music is banned from services in Reformed Church, although city authorities often resume performance at other times. The art whose achievements were ranked at the top was painting, which rested on the broad protection of the affluent population. Portraits of the regent's group and other influential citizens adorned town halls and charities, while still life and anecdotes of popular life are hung in private homes. Landscape painters, especially Jacob van Ruisdael, captured the plains of the Netherlands, white skies with thick clouds, and dim light. So this is the end of our video about the culture and civilization in Netherlands. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.